And that's where you're really here because you've contributed to this incredible building that people have wanted for so many years. And we show another building, it's an arc, it's the arc. So that circle, that's Arlington Memorial Bridge, as you know, it's sort of the most important one, a very important structure. And at the end of it, you have a circle that was built 150 years ago, nobody knows really when. And in fact, they put a couple of columns on each side. So you have 2 columns on one side, 2 columns on the other. But you have in the middle just a circle. And everyone that passes it said, something was supposed to be built there, that's true. But a thing called the Civil War interfered. That's a good reason. I would say, Ike, that would be a good reason, right? The great Ike Karoline. The Civil War, if you said you're having a war, I think they have a good reason not to build. Again, you know, they were building the Washington Monument, then they stopped, and you could see where they stopped because the stone is a little different color when you get up to the middle. But anyway, they stopped here. And then they were, in 1902, they were going to put a statue of Robert E. Lee up. Would have been okay with me. A lot of people wouldn't have liked it. Would have been okay with me. Would have been okay with a lot of the people in this room, but they didn't do that. And so for years and years it sat, and every time somebody rides over that beautiful bridge going right to the Lincoln Memorial, it's so beautiful, right? It's, they literally say, something's supposed to be here. And so we have versions of it, sizes of it, and it's going to be really beautiful. I think it's going to be fantastic. There's a rendering of what it will look like. You have 3 sizes. That would be the largest one. This is just a model of what it would look like in either of the 3, any of the 3 sizes, which is right here. I don't know if you can see it. So that's Lady Liberty. Lady, did you ever hear of Lady Liberty? On top. But, so the sizes would be very different. Now here's Lincoln, and this is sort of facing this way. And so we have this direct line. They did this and into that. So this would be, I go, small, medium, and large. Medium and large. And whichever one will look good. I happen to think the large one's quite fun. Why are you shocked to hear that? So we're gonna, you know, just do something for.
He just put out a truth statement. If you haven't seen it yet, I encourage you to look at it. But I was just talking with the president and the Secretary of State and the Vice President, and it was a very good and productive call. It lasted more than 2 hours. There were various issues that were discussed. President Putin congratulated President Trump for solving the conflict in Israel and Gaza and bringing.
Okay, so we need to talk about what just happened on Air Force One, because this might be one of the most uncomfortable moments we've seen from Trump in a while. And that's saying something. Picture this. You're on Air Force One, reporters are there, cameras are rolling, and the President of the United States starts talking about his press secretary's lips. Not her job performance, not her communication skills in a professional way, her lips, how they look, how they move, comparing them to a machine gun. Are you kidding me right now? Because that's exactly what Trump did on October 14th. He's standing there with reporters. They're probably expecting some kind of policy discussion or news announcement. And instead, Trump goes off on this bizarre tangent about Karoline Leavitt's physical appearance. And it's not the first time. He's done this before, multiple times. And somehow, it keeps getting worse. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust headlines anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video. Here's what he actually said. Trump looked at the reporters and asked, should we look for someone else? And then he answers his own question. Not a chance. That face and those lips, they operate like a machine gun, don't they? Come on, seriously. This is the President of the United States talking about a professional woman who works for him in front of reporters on camera. And he thinks this is what? A compliment? Appropriate workplace behavior? And the worst part, this isn't even new. Back in August, Trump made almost identical comments about Leavitt. He said, and I'm quoting here, it's that face, it's that intellect, it's those lips and how they move. They operate as if she's a machine gun. Notice anything weird about that? He throws in intellect like an afterthought, sandwiched between comments about her face and lips. It's like he knows he should say something about her actual abilities, but he can't help himself from immediately going back to her appearance. This is textbook inappropriate workplace behavior. Like if any CEO or manager in America said this about an employee, they'd be facing HR complaints, potential lawsuits, public relations nightmares. But because it's Trump, we're all just supposed to shrug and act like this is normal. The reaction online has been absolutely brutal. People are calling it misogynistic, disturbingly gross, strangely sexual, and they're not wrong. Because what Trump is doing here isn't praising Leavitt's professional skills, he's reducing her to her physical appearance in front of the National Press Corps. That's humiliating, that's disrespectful, and honestly, it's creepy. BuzzFeed published a piece asking why members of the press continue to tolerate Trump's condescending and gross comments. And that's a fair question. How many times are we going to watch Trump make inappropriate remarks about women before someone in that room pushes back, before someone asks him directly, why do you keep talking about your female staff members' appearances instead of their work? Because here's the thing, Karoline Leavitt is the White House press secretary. That's a serious job. She's supposed to be managing communications for the entire executive branch, handling press briefings, coordinating messaging on major policy issues. Her qualifications, her experience, her communication strategy, that's what should matter, not whether the president thinks her lips are attractive. And this puts Leavitt in an impossible position. What is she supposed to do? If she complains, she looks like she can't handle the job or she's being too sensitive. If she says nothing, she's tacitly accepting this treatment. Either way, Trump has put her in a humiliating situation that no professional should have to deal with. The New Republic pointed out that Leavitt has been struggling under the spotlight lately, and gee, I wonder why. Maybe it's hard to do your job effectively when your boss keeps publicly objectifying you. Maybe it's difficult to command respect from the press corps when the president treats you like eye candy instead of a serious professional. But this is bigger than just one incident. This is about a pattern of behavior from Trump that goes back years, decades actually. He's been making inappropriate comments about women's appearances his entire public life. And somehow, even after the entire Me Too movement, even after countless scandals and controversies, he's still doing it in 2025 as president on Air Force One. And what makes it even more frustrating is that Trump supporters will defend this. They'll say he was just giving a compliment. They'll say people are being too sensitive. They'll say this is just Trump being Trump, as if that makes it okay, as if that's just how he is, counts as an acceptable excuse for workplace harassment. But here's what they're missing. This isn't about being politically correct or overly sensitive. This is about basic respect. This is about treating professional women as professionals, not as decorative objects whose primary value is how they look. So yeah, we need to talk about this, because this isn't normal. This shouldn't be acceptable. And the fact that it keeps happening, the fact that we keep having this same conversation about Trump's treatment of women, tells you everything you need to know about why this matters. All right, let's dig into why this whole situation is so much worse than it might seem at first glance. Because there are layers to this that we need to unpack. First, we need to understand who Karoline Leavitt is and what position she's actually in. She's 28 years old. She's the youngest White House press secretary in history. That's a huge accomplishment, a major responsibility, and an incredibly high-pressure job. She's supposed to be the voice of the administration, the person who explains and defends White House policy to the media and the public. And she was already facing skepticism because of her age and relative inexperience. Critics were questioning whether she was ready for this role, whether she could handle the intense scrutiny, whether she had the gravitas to command respect from veteran White House reporters. Those are legitimate professional challenges that any young person in a high-profile job would face. Now add Trump's comments on top of that. Suddenly, instead of proving herself through her work, she's dealing with her own boss, publicly reducing her to her physical appearance. The conversation shifts from, is she qualified, to, did you hear what Trump said about her lips? That's not helping her do her job. That's actively undermining her professional credibility. And let's be real about what Trump is actually doing here. He's not complimenting her communication skills, he's sexualizing her. When he talks about her face and lips and compares them to a machine gun, he's not talking about her ability to deliver talking points effectively. He's focusing on her physical attractiveness in a way that makes everyone uncomfortable. Think about the machine gun comparison for a second. On the surface, maybe he's trying to say she talks fast or delivers information rapidly, but why frame it around her lips specifically? Why emphasize her face? There are a million ways to compliment someone's communication abilities without making it about their physical features. Trump chose not to do that, and this is a pattern with Trump. He has a long documented history of commenting on women's appearances inappropriately. Remember when he talked about Megyn Kelly having blood coming out of her wherever, or when he rated women's attractiveness on a scale, or the countless comments about female reporters, politicians, staff members, always focusing on how they look rather than what they do? In August, Trump made nearly identical comments about Leavitt, same focus on her face, same weird emphasis on her lips, same uncomfortable energy. So this isn't a one-time slip-up or a moment where he misspoke. This is deliberate. This is how Trump chooses to talk about this woman who works for him. And here's what makes it even more disturbing. Trump does this publicly, on Air Force One, in front of reporters, on the record. He's not even trying to hide it or dress it up as something else. He genuinely seems to think this is appropriate, or at least that he can get away with it because he's the president. The power dynamic here is crucial. Karoline Leavitt works for Trump. He's her boss. She serves at his pleasure, meaning he can fire her whenever he wants. She has essentially zero power in this relationship. When he makes these comments, what is she supposed to do? Contradict him publicly? Call him out? That's career suicide. So she has to stand there and take it, probably smile and act like it's fine, even though it's humiliating and inappropriate. This is textbook workplace harassment. In any other professional environment, this would trigger immediate HR intervention. There would be investigations, sensitivity training at minimum, possibly termination. But because Trump is the president, because he's at the absolute top of the organizational chart, there's no real accountability. Who's going to discipline him? Who's going to tell him this is unacceptable? And let's talk about how this affects Leavitt's ability to actually do her job. She's supposed to command authority in the press briefing room. She's supposed to be taken seriously by journalists who are looking for substantive information about administration policy. But how is she supposed to maintain that authority when her own boss keeps publicly objectifying her? The press corps is watching this. They see how Trump treats her, and whether consciously or unconsciously, that affects how they perceive her. Instead of being seen as a serious professional, she becomes the press secretary Trump keeps making weird comments about. That's not fair to her, but it's reality. The New Republic article pointed out that Leavitt has been under mounting pressure and struggling with the demands of the job. And honestly, who wouldn't be struggling under these circumstances? You're trying to do one of the most difficult communications jobs in the world. You're facing skepticism because of your age, and your own boss keeps undermining you by treating you like a trophy instead of a professional. This also fits into Trump's broader pattern of behavior toward women in his administration and in politics generally. He's made similar comments about other female staff members over the years. He's commented on the appearance of female foreign leaders, including that weird situation with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, where he made inappropriate remarks about her looks. It's like Trump fundamentally cannot separate women's professional roles from their physical appearance. A woman can be the Prime Minister of Italy, the Press Secretary of the United States, a senior advisor, and Trump's first instinct is still to comment on whether he finds them attractive. That's not normal. That shouldn't be acceptable. And it reveals something pretty disturbing about how Trump views women in professional spaces. And here's the thing that really gets me. We're in 2025. The Me Too movement happened years ago. We've had countless national conversations about workplace harassment, about respecting women in professional settings, about the importance of judging people on their merits rather than their appearance. And yet, here we are, the President of the United States, in his second term, still doing the exact same thing that got countless CEOs and executives fired or forced to resign. The fact that Trump can keep doing this without real consequences shows how much power he has and how broken our systems of accountability are. If this were a corporate environment, Leavitt would have grounds for a hostile workplace claim. She could file complaints. There would be investigations. But what recourse does she have when the person creating the hostile environment is the president? Critics on social media have been brutal about this. People are pointing out the hypocrisy, the misogyny, the sheer inappropriateness of Trump's behavior. And they're also asking uncomfortable questions about why this keeps happening. Why does Trump think this is okay? Why don't his advisors stop him? Why doesn't someone in that room push back? BuzzFeed raised a particularly good point, asking why the press continues to tolerate this. And that's worth thinking about. Every reporter on Air Force One heard Trump's comments. They're all aware of the pattern. But how many of them actually challenged him on it? How many asked follow-up questions about whether he thinks it's appropriate to talk about his staff members that way? The silence from the press in these moments is its own kind of problem. Because when Trump says something inappropriate and nobody pushes back, it normalizes that behavior. It sends a message that this is just how things are, that we should accept it and move on. And that's not okay. So let's break down what this whole mess actually means, because the implications go way beyond just one uncomfortable moment on Air Force One. First point, this is about workplace culture at the highest levels of government. The White House is supposed to set the standard for professional conduct. It's supposed to be a place where the most talented people in the country come to serve, where merit matters, where everyone is treated with respect regardless of gender. But Trump's behavior completely undermines that ideal. When the president publicly objectifies his female staff, it sends a message to everyone else in the administration about what's acceptable. It creates an environment where women might feel they're valued more for their appearance than their abilities. It discourages talented women from wanting to work there, and it makes the few women who do work there feel like they constantly have to prove they're more than just window dressing. This isn't just about Karoline Leavitt. this affects every woman working in the Trump administration because they're all watching this. They're all seeing how the president treats female staff, and they're all wondering, is this how he sees me too? Am I being evaluated on my work or on my appearance? It's toxic, it's demoralizing, and it makes it harder to recruit and retain talented women in government service. Second point, this highlights the complete lack of accountability for Trump's behavior. In any normal workplace, this kind of conduct would have consequences. There would be complaints, investigations, disciplinary action, but Trump operates in this weird bubble where normal rules don't apply. He's the president, he can say whatever he wants, and there's no real mechanism to hold him accountable for inappropriate comments. That's a fundamental problem with how we handle presidential conduct. We rely on norms and expectations, on the assumption that presidents will behave professionally and respectfully. But what happens when a president just doesn't care about those norms? What happens when he's willing to break every rule of professional conduct and face zero consequences? We don't really have good answers to those questions. The closest thing to accountability here is public criticism and media coverage. People calling out Trump's behavior on social media, news outlets writing articles about how inappropriate his comments were. But does Trump care about that? Does negative press coverage actually change his behavior based on the fact that he keeps doing this? Apparently not. Third point, this is devastating for Karoline Leavitt's professional reputation and career trajectory. And that's incredibly unfair because she didn't do anything wrong. She's just trying to do her job. But now, whenever anyone talks about her, this incident comes up. She becomes the press secretary Trump made gross comments about instead of being recognized for her actual work. That's the insidious thing about this kind of behavior. It doesn't just affect the moment it happens. It follows her. Future employers will search her name online, and this will come up. Political opponents will use it against her. Late-night comedians will make jokes. She can't escape it, even though she's the victim here, not the perpetrator. And think about what this means for her career path. After serving as White House press secretary, she should be set up for high-level communications jobs, maybe in the private sector, maybe in politics. But now she has to deal with this baggage. Companies might hesitate to hire her because they don't want the controversy. Political campaigns might worry about the optics. Her professional opportunities get limited because her boss couldn't keep his inappropriate comments to himself. Fourth point, this reveals something fundamental about how Trump views women in professional roles. After all these years, after all the scandals and controversies, after the Me Too movement and countless conversations about respect and equality, Trump is still doing this, which means he either doesn't understand why it's wrong or he doesn't care. And honestly, I think it's probably both. Trump comes from a generation and a business background where this kind of behavior was more tolerated, where powerful men could comment on women's appearances without facing real consequences, where treating women as decorative objects was just part of the culture. And he's never really evolved past that mindset. But the world has changed. Society has changed. What was maybe overlooked or excused in the 1980s or 1990s is absolutely unacceptable now. We have higher standards for how people in positions of power should behave. We expect leaders to treat everyone with respect, to judge people on their merits, to create inclusive professional environments. Trump just doesn't seem to get that, or he gets it and doesn't care. And that's a problem, not just for the women he directly interacts with, but for the entire country. Because the president sets a tone. Young people watch how he behaves and they learn from it. Business leaders look at presidential conduct as a model. When Trump treats women this way, it normalizes that behavior for millions of people. Fifth point, the silence from Trump's allies and supporters on this is deafening. Where are the Republicans calling this out? Where are the female members of Congress defending Leavitt? Where are the White House staffers pushing back? The silence implies consent. The silence says that this behavior is acceptable within the Republican Party, within the Trump administration, within conservative political circles. And that's damaging for the party's brand and for the conservative movement more broadly. Women are watching this. Moderate voters are watching this. Independent voters are watching this. And they're seeing a party that won't stand up to their leader even when he's clearly out of line. That's not a good look. That's not how you build a winning coalition or attract new voters. The political calculation here is obvious. Republican politicians don't want to anger Trump or his base by criticizing him. They're afraid of being primary or losing support. So they stay silent even when he does things that are obviously wrong. But that short-term political calculation comes with long-term costs. It alienates voters. It reinforces negative stereotypes. And it makes it harder to claim any kind of moral authority on other issues. Sixth point, this is exhausting for everyone who cares about basic decency and respect in our political discourse. We keep having the same conversations about Trump's behavior. We keep being shocked by comments that honestly shouldn't shock us anymore because he's done this so many times. And nothing changes. He keeps doing it. His supporters keep defending it. And the rest of us are left wondering how we got to a place where this is just normal. Like, can you imagine if Barack Obama had made similar comments about his press secretary, or if George W. Bush had, or if any other president in modern history had publicly objectified their female staff in this way, there would have been massive bipartisan outrage, calls for apology, demands for consequences. But with Trump, it's just Tuesday. That normalization is dangerous. Because once we accept that the president can behave this way without real consequences, what else do we accept? What other norms and standards do we let slide? So where does this leave us? Well, Trump made inappropriate comments about Karoline Leavitt. Again, critics are calling it out again, and probably nothing will change. Trump won't apologize. He won't modify his behavior. His supporters will defend him or dismiss it. And in a few weeks or months, we'll have this exact same conversation about something else he said. That's the depressing reality. We're stuck in this cycle where Trump does something inappropriate, people get outraged, and then everyone moves on until the next incident. And women like Karoline Leavitt, who are just trying to do their jobs, get caught in the crossfire. They become collateral damage in Trump's ongoing war with professional norms and basic respect. The only thing that might change this pattern is sustained pressure and accountability, media coverage that doesn't let this slide, politicians willing to call it out even if it's politically risky, voters making it clear that this behavior is unacceptable and will have electoral consequences. But until that happens, until there's real accountability, Trump will keep doing this.